New figures came out this week showing that reading and math scores have plummeted, especially in the wake of the pandemic lockdowns. Lesson plans overrun with woke socialist propaganda, drag queens in libraries, and mental health issues among children on the rise. But the nation's teachers' unions seem to be, not surprisingly, focused on themselves. According to the president and CEO of the Empire Center for Public Policy, Tim Hoefer, the unions are using strong-arm tactics to try to increase their numbers. In his new Wall Street Journal op-ed, Hoefer revealed how the unions are employing these aggressive tactics after a Supreme Court decision tried to limit their power. Mr. Hoefer joins us now. Tim, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
You too, Tom. Thanks.
So Tim, for decades, labor unions were able to collect these millions in dues from public employees who were forced to join the union if they wanted a job. Talk to us, though, about how in 2018, the Supreme Court case known as Janus was supposed to change that.
Yeah, so Mark Janus, a public employee from Illinois, agreed with, I think, the majority of Americans who feel like they shouldn't be forced to be a member or to pay an organization that they don't agree with. This is impactful for government unions because up until the Supreme Court decided in Janus, if you were an employee of a government operation, you either paid the union or you joined it. Either way, you were supporting their efforts. So what should have happened is employees should have had the ability to say, no, thank you. I don't want to be a part of this union. I'm not going to pay you. That did happen. But then all of these things that we started to address in this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal began to happen around it.
So you wrote in the Journal, quote, state laws which control collective bargaining in state and local governments are supposed to shield public workers from coercion with respect to union membership. That protection all but vanishes when management leaves the room. So talk to us about how the unions are trying to skirt the Janus decision and the tactics that they're using to try to intimidate teachers.
Trying to skirt is generous, Tom. I would argue that they've gone ahead and did it. In New York, there were laws passed before Janus even came down from the Supreme Court that gave the unions more power in orientation meetings. And how this plays out, all of the trickery aside, there's all kinds of things they can do and hats you can wear and scarves you can put in front of the toys. But what really is happening is the employers become complicit in what the unions are doing when they leave the room. Because put yourself in their shoes. If you're a new employee, you show up at your orientation, your new boss says, all right, I'm going to step out now so you can talk to the union. Don't worry, your job doesn't depend on whether or not you join. The only thing it's missing is the wink and the nod, right?
Right. So they're like you said, they're complicit. They're leaving the room. They're allowing this to happen. What can teachers or taxpayers do when they hear about these tactics being used in their school districts?
Yeah, I mean, number one is to talk about it. And that's exactly what this is all about, is making sure that people know. This isn't something that's part of the mainstream. Taxpayers for sure don't know what's going on if they aren't public employees. And unless you know different, if you're to get hired, how would you know not to join or that you have the right if nobody tells you? And that's the issue that this is all about. And this, as much as this is on the unions for going after everything they can get to protect themselves, a big part of this is on the employers who really need to be there protecting not only their employees, but the best interests of the taxpayers.
Tim, COVID was a disaster for kids in public schools. We've been talking about it all day here. The teachers' unions were exposed for being pretty much totally self-interested. The reputation of the teaching profession is on a downswing with all the CRT and the transgender indoctrination. Is the power of the teachers' unions declining due to Janus and some of these other factors? Where do you see kind of the state of unions and that fight between union, non-union, or folks who want a non-union shop and parents who are trying to have some power and some say?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. So certainly there have been historic drops to public sector union membership since Janus. You can count in the hundreds of thousands and millions of public employees who have decided not to pay the union since they've been given that choice. But in other sectors, in certain sectors of even the public side of things, union membership is increasing. And you can feel any way you want, obviously, about whether or not unions have a place, but they're here. They're certainly here in New York. They're all over the country. People will continue to want to be a part of the union. People will continue not to until those who are looking out for the interests of their own students, when you think about parents, when you think about community members, they need to be much more actively engaged if they want to push against some of these policies. And there are lots of things, as you mentioned, Tom, that are a part of this. The biggest part for a homeowner, think about your tax bill.
Right.
The unions are there negotiating, obviously, on behalf of their members. They are set up to do what is best for their members, who in this case, in this conversation, are the teachers. So of course they want to get them more money, and of course they want them to work less, and of course they want to have more resources. That is not always what's best for the children, as we both know.
And it's certainly not what's best for the taxpayer necessarily either, who can barely afford to maybe stay in their home or in their community. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, but a fantastic piece in the Wall Street Journal. Thank you for writing it. Tim Hoefer, the CEO and the president of the Empire Center for Public Policy. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Tom.